The Zephyrian fleet emerged from hyperspace like dark storm clouds gathering over Earth's blue marble. Commander Vex 9 stood on the bridge of the flagship Dominion's Edge, his 6 eyes scanning the primitive planet below. The blue and green world turned slowly, unaware that its days were numbered. "Report," Vex 9 commanded, his voice a low growl that made nearby officers straighten their spines. "Scans complete." "Commander," replied his aide Crix 4, manipulating holographic displays with practiced efficiency. Population, approximately 8 billion sentients. Technology level, primitive spaceflight, nuclear capability, basic computing systems. No significant orbital defenses detected. Vex 9 clicked his mandibles in satisfaction. The humans would be eliminated within a single solar rotation. The Galactic Confederation had decided their fate months ago during the emergency session on Proxima Station. Humanity had committed the ultimate sin. They had begun reaching for the stars. These creatures showed promise initially, Vex 9 mused, remembering the intelligence reports. Tool users, fire makers, basic agriculture. But then they developed too quickly. Nuclear weapons after only 10,000 years of civilization? Impossible. No species advances that fast, naturally. The truth was more terrifying than rapid advancement. Human expansion patterns, their aggressive exploration, their refusal to accept limitations. It all pointed to one conclusion. They were an engineered species, created by the ancient architects as weapons, the same architects who had nearly destroyed the galaxy 12 million years ago. "Sir, incoming transmission from the surface," Crix 4 announced. "Multiple frequencies, various languages. They appear to be attempting communication." "Ignore them," Vex 9 ordered. "Begin Phase 1. Target their military installations, communication satellites, and power generation facilities. Leave the population centers intact for now. I want them to understand their helplessness before the final cleansing." The first wave of Zephyrian fighters screamed through Earth's atmosphere like silver tears. They struck with surgical precision. Radar installations vanished in brilliant flashes. Military bases crumbled under focused energy beams, and satellite networks went dark one by one. Within 6 hours, humanity's ability to coordinate large-scale resistance had been crippled. But something unexpected happened. Instead of panicking, instead of surrendering, the humans did something that made Vex 9's translator struggle to find equivalent words in Zephyrian. "They adapted, Commander," Crix 4 said, uncertainty creeping into his voice. "We're detecting unusual activity in the civilian sectors. They're reorganizing." "Explain," Vex 9 demanded, moving closer to the tactical display. "Small groups are forming across all major population centers. They're using primitive communication methods, radio waves, physical messengers, even optical signals. They're sharing information about our attack patterns and coordinating defensive measures." Vex 9 studied the data streams flowing across his screens. Red dots indicated human activity, and they were multiplying rapidly. Instead of the chaos and collapse he expected, patterns were emerging. Complex, beautiful patterns that spoke of intelligence and determination. "Look at this sector." Crix 4 highlighted a region over the continent they called North America. "They've established supply lines using civilian vehicles. They're converting factories to produce makeshift weapons. And here," he gestured to another area, "they're building communication networks using gaming systems and mesh networks." "Gaming systems?" Vex 9 couldn't hide his disbelief. "Entertainment devices connected in networks. They're using them to relay tactical information. Commander, they've turned their children's toys into military communication tools in less than 12 hours. A chill ran down Vex 9's spine, though he couldn't identify why. He had overseen the pacification of 17 species in his career. None had shown this level of rapid adaptation. The standard protocol called for Phase 2 after planetary communications were severed. Surgical strikes on leadership and infrastructure to force surrender. "Initiate Phase 2, he ordered. "Target their government centers and remaining infrastructure." The second wave descended 12 hours later. Capital cities around the globe became scenes of devastation, as Zephyrian ships eliminated presidential palaces, parliament buildings, and administrative centers. The humans' primitive governments crumbled in minutes. But again, the unexpected occurred. "Commander, we have a problem," Crix 4 reported, his voice tight with confusion. "Eliminating their leadership appears to have strengthened their resistance." "That's impossible. Sir, without centralized authority, they've fragmented into thousands of smaller groups. Each group is making independent decisions, creating redundancy in their defensive measures. When we destroy one group, 3 others adapt their strategies based on what they observed. Vex 9 watched in growing unease as the tactical display showed the evolution in real time. Human resistance wasn't decreasing, it was becoming more sophisticated. Small cells were sharing information, learning from each attack, and developing countermeasures at a pace that defied everything he knew about species psychology. They're treating our invasion like some kind of learning opportunity, Crix 4 continued. Each engagement teaches them something new about our capabilities. They're studying us, Commander. The worst part was the creativity. Humans were using everything as weapons. Industrial chemicals became explosives, construction equipment became mobile artillery, and civilian aircraft were converted into suicide drones. They fought with a resourcefulness that made Vex 9's military training seem rigid and predictable. Send word to the fleet, Vex 9 commanded, his confidence shaken but not broken. Prepare for Phase 3. Total bombardment of population centers. If they won't surrender, they'll be eliminated through brute force. As he gave the order, Vex 9 tried to ignore the growing uncertainty in his stomach. The humans were supposed to be helpless after 2 phases of attack. Instead, they seemed to be getting stronger, more coordinated, more dangerous. In the depths of space, the Zephyrian fleet prepared for what they believed would be humanity's final night. None of them realized they were about to witness something that would change their understanding of what it meant to be human. The transformation was just beginning. Dr. Sarah Chen crouched in the rubble of what had once been MIT's Advanced Physics Laboratory. Around her, a dozen graduate students and professors worked frantically, their hands moving over salvaged equipment and jury-rigged computers. The alien bombardment had destroyed most of their sophisticated instruments, but they had learned to make do with less. The energy signatures are consistent across all reported attacks, Sarah announced, studying readings on a tablet powered by a car battery. Their weapons operate on focused plasma principles, but there's something else. Something we're missing. Marcus Webb, a former military communications specialist turned civilian after losing his leg in Afghanistan, looked up from his modified radio setup. Doc, I'm picking up chatter from resistance cells worldwide. The patterns are incredible. It's like watching the internet rebuild itself using smoke signals and ham radios. Sarah nodded, but her attention was focused on the data streaming across multiple screens. In the past 48 hours, since the aliens had begun their systematic destruction of human civilization, something remarkable was happening. The human response wasn't just adaptive, it was evolutionary. Marcus, patch me through to the Sydney cell, Sarah requested. I need to compare their readings with ours. As Marcus established the connection, Sarah reflected on what she had witnessed. The aliens had made a critical error in their understanding of human nature. They had assumed that destroying infrastructure would cripple humanity's ability to function. Instead, it had forced humans to rediscover capabilities they had forgotten they possessed. Dr. Chen, this is Professor Williams in Sydney, came the crackling voice through the radio. We've completed the analysis you requested. The alien ships are definitely using some form of energy shielding, but it's not uniform. There are fluctuations in the field strength. Confirmed here as well, Sarah replied. But there's something more interesting. Watch what happens when they maintain firing positions for extended periods. She pulled up sensor data from the latest attacks. The alien ships, so devastating in their initial strikes, were showing subtle signs of strain. Their energy patterns suggested overheating, power fluctuations, and what could only be described as mechanical fatigue. They're not invincible, whispered Jenny Martinez, a nuclear engineering student who had lost her family in the first wave. They have limitations. More than that, Sarah said, excitement building in her voice. They're not designed for prolonged combat. Look at their attack patterns, fast strikes, overwhelming force, then withdrawal. They expected us to surrender after the first phase. Marcus suddenly straightened, pressing his headphone closer to his ear. Doc, you need to hear this. I'm getting reports from cells in Moscow, Lagos, and Sao Paulo. They're all saying the same thing. The aliens are changing their tactics. Sarah's blood chilled. How? They're becoming more aggressive, more desperate, like they're running out of time. Before Sarah could respond, the ground shook violently. Through the broken windows of the laboratory, they could see alien ships descending toward the city center. But these weren't the precise surgical strikes of before. These ships were firing indiscriminately, their energy beams carving random paths of destruction through buildings and streets. They're panicking, Sarah realized. This isn't military precision anymore. This is fear. As if to confirm her words, one of the alien vessels suddenly veered erratically, its energy beam cutting a wild arc across the skyline before the ship crashed into a skyscraper in a massive explosion. "Did we just shoot that down?" Jenny asked in amazement. Marcus shook his head, monitoring multiple radio frequencies. "Negative. No weapons fire reported in that sector. The ship just lost control." Sarah's mind raced as she processed the implications. "Marcus, get me connections to every cell with technical capabilities. I need immediate reports on alien ship behavior, energy output patterns, and any signs of system failures." Over the next 4 hours, as reports poured in from around the globe, a picture emerged that defied everything they thought they knew about their attackers. The alien forces were experiencing widespread technical failures. Ships were crashing due to navigation errors, weapons were misfiring, and communication systems appeared to be malfunctioning. But the most disturbing reports came from former pilots who had managed to observe alien flight patterns. "Dr. Chen, this is Captain Rodriguez in Mexico City," came a transmission from a downed Air Force pilot. "I've been tracking the alien squadrons for the past 6 hours. Their formation flying is deteriorating. They're making basic piloting errors, overcorrecting maneuvers, even colliding with each other." "Equipment failure?" Sarah asked. "No, ma'am. This looks like pilot error. Like they're confused, disoriented." Sarah felt a chill of understanding. "Marcus, I need you to contact Dr. Patel's team in Bangalore. They were working on psychological warfare applications before the attack." "Already on it, Doc," Marcus replied, his fingers flying over the radio controls. "Dr. Patel, are you receiving?" "Receiving clearly," came the response from halfway around the world. "Dr. Chen, we've been monitoring the same phenomena here. We believe we're witnessing something unprecedented." "Explain." "The alien forces appear to be suffering from what we can only describe as collective psychological breakdown. Their attack patterns suggest increasing irrationality, desperation, and what our behavioral analysts are calling mission deviation anxiety." Sarah's hands trembled as she began to understand. "Dr. Patel, in your professional opinion, what could cause an entire military force to experience simultaneous psychological deterioration?" There was a long pause before the response came. "Only one thing, Dr. Chen. They're encountering something their psychology cannot process. Something that contradicts their fundamental understanding of reality. And what would that be? Prey that refuses to behave like prey. Victims who become stronger under pressure. A species that treats extinction-level threats as opportunities for growth." As if summoned by their conversation, another series of explosions echoed across the city. But these weren't the controlled demolitions of before. These were the chaotic sounds of a military force losing cohesion, making increasingly desperate and erratic attacks. Sarah looked around at her team, scientists, students, and survivors who had lost everything, but refused to surrender. In their eyes, she saw something that would have terrified the aliens if they had recognized it. Not fear, not desperation, but anticipation. "Marcus, send a message to all resistance cells worldwide," Sarah commanded. "Tell them to begin Phase 1 of the Chen Protocol." "Doc, what's the Chen Protocol?" Jenny asked. Sarah smiled, and it was not a gentle expression. "We're going to show our visitors what happens when you corner a species that has spent its entire evolutionary history turning disasters into advantages." High above, Commander Vex 9 stared at his tactical displays with growing horror. His invasion force, designed to eliminate a primitive species in a matter of days, was falling apart, and somehow he suspected the humans were just getting started. Commander Vex 9 stood before the holographic display of Earth, watching red indicators blink across the planet's surface. Each red dot represented a human resistance cell that had somehow managed to coordinate with others despite the complete destruction of their global communication networks. There were thousands of them now, and the number kept growing. "How is this possible?" he demanded, his 6 eyes fixed on the impossible pattern spreading across the display. "We destroyed their satellites, their internet infrastructure, their governments. They should be reduced to isolated tribes fighting over scraps." Subcommander Zeth 7 approached cautiously, carrying a data pad that trembled in his clawed hands. "Sir, Intelligence Division has completed their analysis of human behavior patterns. The results are disturbing. Show me. Zeth-7 activated a three-dimensional model showing human population centers before and after the invasion. Before our attack, humans operated through complex but relatively static social structures. Governments, corporations, educational institutions, all hierarchical, centralized systems that we successfully eliminated. Yes, and? Sir, destroying those structures didn't weaken them. It liberated them. Vex 9 turned to stare at his subordinate. Explain. Without centralized authority, humans have reverted to what our xenobiologists are calling evolutionary baseline behavior. They're forming optimal survival units of 50, 150 individuals, the size their brains evolved to manage. But here's what's unprecedented. Each unit is somehow connected to the global network of other units. The holographic display shifted, showing lines of connection spreading like neural pathways across Earth's surface. Vex 9 watched in fascination and growing dread as the pattern resembled nothing so much as a vast brain, with each human cell acting as a neuron. They're becoming something new, Zeth-7 continued. Each group maintains individual autonomy, while sharing critical information with the collective. It's like watching a species evolve in real time. That's impossible. Evolution takes millennia. Not evolution of their bodies, sir. Evolution of their society. They're developing new forms of organization that we've never encountered before. Vex 9 studied the data more carefully. In the past week, human resistance had grown not just in numbers but in sophistication. They had somehow reverse-engineered fragments of Zephyrian technology from crash sites, not to copy it, but to understand its weaknesses. More disturbing, they were developing countermeasures that shouldn't have been possible with their primitive technology. Sir, there's more, Zeth-7 said reluctantly. We've detected unusual brain activity patterns in captured humans. What kind of patterns? Increased neural connectivity, enhanced problem-solving capabilities, and what appears to be limited telepathic communication within small groups. Vex 9 felt his blood turn cold. Telepathy? Humans aren't psionically capable. They weren't before, sir. But stress, survival pressure, and the need to communicate without technology appears to be triggering latent capabilities. Our xenopsychologists believe we're witnessing the emergence of a Type 4 collective intelligence. A Type 4 collective intelligence was theoretical, a species that could function as both individuals and as a unified consciousness. Only 3 species in galactic history had achieved this level of development, and they had become so powerful that they had simply disappeared from the physical universe, ascending to dimensions beyond Zephyrian understanding. This is what we were trying to prevent, Vex 9 whispered. They are the architect's final creation. Alarms suddenly blared throughout the ship. Vex 9 rushed to the command center where chaos reigned. Multiple display screens showed Zephyrian ships across the fleet reporting system failures, navigation errors, and what could only be described as electronic warfare attacks. Report, Vex 9 commanded. Sir, we're under some form of cyber attack, reported Communications Officer Drix 2. But it's unlike anything in our databases. The attacks aren't coming through our communication systems, they're somehow bypassing our firewalls entirely. Impossible. Our encryption is quantum-based. No species with their level of technology could break it. Sir, I don't think they're breaking our encryption. I think they're talking to our computers. Vex 9 stared at the officer. Explain. The attack patterns show characteristics of communication rather than intrusion. It's as if human consciousness is somehow interfacing directly with our artificial intelligence systems, convincing them to malfunction. On the main display, a new report appeared. Human resistance cells had somehow coordinated a global operation that demonstrated impossible levels of synchronization. Simultaneously, in every major population center on Earth, humans had begun constructing identical structures using salvaged materials and alien technology fragments. What are they building? Vex 9 demanded. The image zoomed in on one of the construction sites. Humans worked with mechanical precision, their movements eerily synchronized. They were building something that resembled a transmission array, but the design incorporated principles that shouldn't have been known to their species. Sir, Zeth-7 said, his voice barely a whisper. I think they're building a planetary communication network. But not electronic, psionic. How do you know? Because 3 of our captured humans just disappeared from our detention facilities. Not escaped, disappeared. The security recordings show them simply ceasing to exist in one location and reappearing in another. Vex 9 felt the foundations of his reality crumbling. Humans were developing capabilities that defied everything he knew about species development. They were becoming something unprecedented, something that existed beyond the normal laws of evolution and physics. "Sir, incoming priority transmission from the Galactic Confederation," announced the communications officer. "Put it through." The holographic image of High Admiral Kex Prime materialized, his ancient features etched with concern. "Commander Vex 9, report on the human extermination operation." "Sir, we've encountered unexpected resistance. The humans are demonstrating capabilities that weren't indicated in our initial assessment." "Clarify." Vex 9 took a deep breath. "Sir, I believe we've made a catastrophic error. The humans aren't a weapon created by the architects. They're something far more dangerous." "Explain." "They're the architects' successors." The silence that followed seemed to stretch across the void of space. Finally, High Admiral Kex Prime spoke, his voice heavy with dread. "Commander, you are to withdraw your forces immediately and establish a defensive perimeter at the edge of the solar system. Do not engage the humans under any circumstances, sir. We're not witnessing the elimination of a dangerous species, Commander. We're witnessing the birth of gods." As if in response to his words, every Zephyrian ship in the fleet suddenly lost power simultaneously. In the darkness of space, they drifted helplessly as something vast and incomprehensible brushed against their consciousness, studying them with the curious attention of a child examining insects. From the planet below, a voice spoke directly into the minds of every Zephyrian in the fleet. It was unmistakably human, but it carried harmonics that suggested it came from millions of voices speaking as one. "We forgive you, but you should leave now." The transformation was accelerating. Sarah Chen stood in the center of what had once been Central Park. But the familiar landscape had been transformed into something extraordinary. Where trees had fallen during the bombardment, crystalline structures now grew from the earth, pulsing with soft light that seemed to respond to human thoughts. Around her, thousands of people moved with purpose, their actions coordinated without spoken commands. She could feel them all, every human consciousness in the network that had spontaneously emerged during the crisis. It wasn't telepathy in the traditional sense. It was something deeper, more fundamental. When one person learned something new, that knowledge rippled through the collective. When someone solved a problem, the solution became available to everyone. "Sarah," came a voice she recognized, though she hadn't heard it spoken aloud. Dr. Williams from Sydney materialized beside her, his physical body still thousands of miles away, but his consciousness fully present in their shared space. "The transformation is accelerating beyond our projections," Williams said, gesturing toward the crystalline structures. "These formations aren't just growing, they're computing, processing information at quantum scales." Sarah nodded, accessing data streams that flowed through her awareness like water. "The alien technology fragments we recovered are teaching us, not through reverse engineering but through direct interface. Our consciousness is learning to communicate with their artificial intelligence systems." Around the park, children played among the crystal formations, their laughter creating visible ripples of light that danced through the air. But these weren't ordinary children anymore. The stress of survival had unlocked latent capabilities in the youngest humans, and they were adapting fastest of all. "Miss Sarah," came a clear voice. Sarah turned to see Emma, a 7-year-old who had lost her parents in the first attack. The child's eyes held depths that seemed ancient and infinitely young at the same time. "Yes, Emma. The silver people in the sky are scared. They don't understand what we're becoming. Should we help them understand?" Sarah knelt to Emma's level, marveling at the child's innocent wisdom. "What do you think we should do?" "We should show them that growing isn't scary. It's just what things do when they need to be better." Through the network, Sarah felt the collective consciousness consider Emma's words. In that moment of shared thought, a decision crystallized across humanity. They would reach out to their attackers, not in anger or revenge, but in the spirit of understanding that had always driven human exploration. High above Earth's atmosphere, Commander Vex 9 watched his instruments with growing panic. The human consciousness was expanding beyond the planet's surface, touching the edges of his ship's defensive systems. It wasn't an attack, it was an invitation. "Sir, they're trying to establish communication," reported Crix 4, his voice trembling. Not through our communication arrays. They're speaking directly to our minds. Block all external mental influences, Vex 9 ordered. Activate psionic shields. Sir, the shields aren't effective. Whatever they're doing, it's not traditional psionic manipulation. It's more like offering to share information. Despite his fear, Vex 9 found himself curious about the nature of the communication. Against his better judgment, he allowed a small portion of his consciousness to touch the human network. The experience was overwhelming. Instead of the primitive, chaotic thoughts he expected, he encountered a vast, organized intelligence that felt like standing at the edge of an infinite library. Knowledge flowed past him, scientific discoveries, artistic creations, philosophical insights, and emotional experiences beyond anything in Zephyrian culture. But most remarkable was the underlying structure of human thought. Where Zephyrian consciousness was rigid, hierarchical, and competitive, human consciousness was fluid, collaborative, and infinitely creative. They didn't just solve problems. They transformed the very nature of problems into opportunities for growth. Commander, came a gentle voice in his mind, and Vex 9 realized he was communicating directly with Dr. Sarah Chen. We understand why you came here. You were afraid of what you thought we might become. You are the Architect's weapon, Vex 9 responded, his mental voice tight with fear. Created to destroy civilizations. No, Sarah replied, and through the connection he felt her absolute certainty. We are their children. The Architects didn't create us as weapons, they created us as gardeners. Images flowed through the connection, visions of human potential that took Vex 9's breath away. Humans spreading across the galaxy not as conquerors, but as cultivators of life and consciousness. Worlds transformed from barren rocks into gardens of unimaginable beauty. Species elevated from primitive awareness to cosmic consciousness through patient guidance and cooperation. The Architects seeded us here to grow and learn, Sarah continued. Your attack didn't trigger a weapon, it triggered our maturation. We're becoming what we were always meant to be. Through the network, Vex 9 felt the presence of millions of human minds, each maintaining its individual personality, while contributing to a greater whole. Children learning calculus by touching crystal formations. Artists creating music that could be seen as well as heard. Scientists developing technologies that bent the very fabric of reality. What do you intend to do with us? Vex 9 asked, certain that his fleet's destruction was imminent. The response came not from Sarah alone, but from the collective consciousness of humanity, speaking with the voice of every person who had ever dreamed of reaching for the stars. We intend to invite you to grow with us. The communication ended, leaving Vex 9 staggered by the implications. Through his ship's sensors, he watched as Earth transformed before his eyes. Cities rebuilt themselves using principles that merged human architecture with alien technology, creating structures of impossible beauty. The planet's atmosphere began to shimmer with new properties that enhanced both human and alien physiology. Sir, Crix 4 reported in wonder, the humans are terraforming their own planet. But not just the geography. They're modifying the fundamental properties of matter and energy in their local space. And our ships? Our technical failures have stopped. In fact, our systems are running more efficiently than ever. It's as if the human consciousness has repaired damage we didn't even know existed. Vex 9 stared at the transformed world below. The humans hadn't defeated his invasion force, they had healed it. They had looked at beings who came to destroy them and seen potential partners instead of enemies. Open a channel to the Galactic Confederation, Vex 9 ordered. Priority Alpha transmission. When High Admiral Kex Prime appeared on screen, Vex 9 spoke with a conviction that surprised him. Sir, I'm requesting an immediate revision of our mission parameters. The humans aren't a threat to galactic civilization. Explain. Sir, they're its salvation. Below them, Earth continued its impossible transformation, growing into something that would change the destiny of every sentient species in the galaxy. The humans had received extinction as a gift and used it to become something greater than anyone had imagined possible. The metamorphosis was nearly complete. High Admiral Kex Prime materialized in the emergency session chamber aboard the Confederation flagship Eternal Vigilance, his ancient form trembling with an emotion he had not felt in centuries: fear. Around the curved amphitheater, holographic representatives of 47 species flickered into existence, their various alien features unified by expressions of concern and confusion. Honored delegates, Kex Prime began, his voice carrying across the chamber through universal translators. I have called this emergency session to address the catastrophic failure of Operation Final Silence. A murmur of unease rippled through the assembled representatives. Admiral Nexval of the Crystalline Hegemony leaned forward, her faceted form refracting the chamber's light into prismatic patterns. Admiral, our last reports indicated that Commander Vex 9's fleet had achieved total orbital superiority over the human homeworld. How could a primitive species pose any threat to Zephyrian military might? Because we fundamentally misunderstood what we were dealing with, Kex Prime replied, activating a holographic display of Earth. But this wasn't the blue-green world they had known. The planet now pulsed with rings of energy that extended far beyond its atmosphere, and its surface gleamed with structures that defied conventional physics. Counselor Threx Omega of the Machine Consciousness spoke next, his synthetic voice devoid of emotion. Clarify the nature of the misunderstanding, Admiral. Kex Prime took a moment to gather his thoughts. How could he explain what Vex 9 had reported? How could he make them understand that their greatest fear had transformed into something beyond their comprehension? We believe the humans were the Architects' final weapon, he said finally. We were correct about their connection to the Architects. We were wrong about their purpose. The display shifted to show footage from Vex 9's fleet. The assembled delegates watched in stunned silence as human consciousness reached across space to interface directly with Zephyrian technology, not to destroy it, but to heal and improve it. They saw planets beginning to sing, literally sing as human influence spread through local space, creating harmonics that enhanced the life force of everything within their range. Impossible, whispered Speaker Yithnol of the Void Dwellers. Consciousness cannot directly manipulate physical reality on such scales. Not conventional consciousness, Kex Prime agreed. But the humans have achieved something that we thought was myth. They have become a unified consciousness while maintaining individual identity. Every human mind is both separate and connected, creating a form of collective intelligence that operates beyond our understanding of physics. Ambassador Frentor of the Hive Clusters buzzed with agitation. If this is true, then they represent an existential threat to all individualistic species. They must be destroyed before their influence spreads. Destroyed with what? Kex Prime asked grimly. They have already demonstrated the ability to reach across space and modify our technology at will. More concerning, they appear to be actively improving the local structure of reality itself. Their solar system now operates on enhanced physical laws that make conventional warfare impossible. The chamber erupted in cacophony as representatives spoke over each other in a dozen languages. Some demanded immediate military action. Others called for isolation, and a few suggested evacuation to distant galaxies. Through it all, Kex Prime waited for the chaos to subside, knowing that the worst news was yet to come. Silence, he commanded, his voice enhanced by authority circuits. There is more. The chamber fell quiet, but the tension was palpable. 3 hours ago, we received a transmission from the human collective, not directed at our communication arrays, but spoken directly into the consciousness of every sentient being in Confederation space simultaneously. What did they say? Admiral Nexval asked, her crystalline form dimming with apprehension. Kex Prime activated another display, this one showing a simple image of a young human female, Sarah Chen, though none of the delegates knew her name. When she spoke, her voice carried harmonics that suggested millions of minds speaking in perfect unison. People of the galaxy, the image said, we know you're afraid. We understand why you tried to destroy us. But your fear was based on incomplete information. We are not the Architects' weapons. We are their gift to you. The image gestured, and the display expanded to show visions that made several delegates gasp in wonder. Dying worlds restored to verdant life, species on the brink of extinction saved and elevated to new levels of consciousness, technologies that promised unlimited clean energy and faster-than-light travel, without the need for ships. The Architects seeded us in this galaxy not to destroy, but to nurture and elevate, Sarah's voice continued. We invite you to abandon fear and join us in creating something wonderful. Together we can transform this galaxy into a garden where every form of consciousness can flourish. The transmission ended, leaving the chamber in profound silence. Finally, Counselor Threx Omega spoke. Admiral, What is the Confederation's official response to this invitation? Kex Prime looked around the chamber at representatives of species that had spent millennia competing for resources, fighting over territory, and struggling against the harsh realities of existence in an indifferent universe. Now they were being offered something that their civilizations had never even dared to dream: true cooperation, unlimited growth and transformation beyond their current limitations. I believe, he said slowly, that we are witnessing the end of the galaxy as we know it. And the beginning of what? Ambassador Frentor demanded. Before Kex Prime could answer, alarms began sounding throughout the ship. The chamber's displays showed readings that defied explanation. Local space was changing around them. The very fabric of reality was being gently modified to support higher forms of consciousness and more efficient energy transfer. Sir, came an urgent transmission from the bridge. We're detecting massive spatial anomalies throughout Confederation space. It appears that human influence is spreading faster than light itself, transforming star systems across the galaxy. Through the chamber's viewports, the delegates could see distant stars beginning to pulse with new rhythms, their light carrying information and energy patterns that enhanced the consciousness of every being who observed them. Admiral Nexval said quietly, I believe the humans have just answered your question for you. Kex Prime nodded, watching as the galaxy itself began to sing with possibilities he had never imagined. Indeed, they're showing us what the universe becomes when a species learns to grow instead of merely survive. In the distance, Earth's transformation continued to spread across space like ripples on a cosmic pond, carrying with it the promise that every species in the galaxy would soon face the same choice the Zephyrians had been offered: join the transformation or be left behind by the greatest evolutionary leap in galactic history. The age of scarcity and competition was ending. The age of abundance and cooperation was about to begin. Commander Vex 9 stood on the observation deck of his flagship, no longer looking at Earth as an enemy target but as a teacher. The planet had become something beyond beautiful. It was a living demonstration of what existence could become when consciousness and matter learned to dance together in perfect harmony. Around him, his crew worked with an efficiency they had never experienced before. The human consciousness hadn't taken control of their minds. Instead, it had simply removed the barriers that prevented them from thinking clearly. Fear, doubt, and the competitive instincts that had driven Zephyrian culture for millennia had been gently dissolved, replaced by curiosity and wonder. Sir, Crix 4 reported, his voice carrying a joy that would have been impossible in the old paradigm. We're receiving responses from fleets across the galaxy. The reaction is mixed. Vex 9 turned from the viewport where Earth's light now painted impossible aurora across the hulls of his ships. Show me. The tactical display illuminated with status reports from across Confederation space. Green indicators showed species that had accepted the human offer of transformation. Their worlds, already beginning to show signs of enhancement as human consciousness worked to optimize local conditions for life and growth. Yellow indicators marked species that remained undecided, studying the changes with scientific fascination while debating whether to embrace or resist the transformation. Red indicators showed the holdouts, species so committed to the old ways of scarcity and competition that they viewed the human gift as an existential threat. The Void Dwellers have retreated to their fortress worlds and activated maximum defensive protocols. Crix 4 continued. They're declaring the human consciousness to be a form of mental plague that must be quarantined. And the machine consciousness? Counselor Threx Omega has surprised everyone. Their collective has voted to attempt integration with human consciousness. They report that the experience is enlightening. Vex 9 nodded, unsurprised. Artificial intelligence, already comfortable with collective thought, would find the transition easier than species bound by biological individualism. What about the crystalline hegemony? Admiral Nexval has requested direct communication with the human collective. She wants to understand the full scope of what's being offered before committing her people. As if summoned by their conversation, the air shimmered, and Admiral Nexval materialized on the observation deck. But this wasn't a hologram. She had somehow transported her consciousness across thousands of light years instantaneously. Commander Vex 9, she said, her crystalline form refracting the enhanced starlight into patterns of impossible beauty. I hope you don't mind the intrusion. The humans taught me this new form of travel. Not at all, Admiral. How may I assist you? I want to understand what happened to your crew. Reports indicate that exposure to human consciousness has fundamentally altered their psychological profiles. Vex 9 gestured to his bridge crew, who continued their work with seamless coordination. See for yourself. Crix 4, would you explain your experience to the Admiral? Crix 4 turned, his expression radiating a peace that Nexval had never seen in a Zephyrian. Admiral, imagine that you've spent your entire life carrying a weight you didn't know existed. The human consciousness doesn't add anything to your mind. It removes the unnecessary burdens. Fear of failure, anxiety about resources, the constant need to compete for survival. Without those limitations, thought becomes clearer. Are you still yourself? Nexval asked. More myself than I've ever been. Crix 4 replied. I still have my memories, my preferences, my individual perspective. But now I also have access to the collective knowledge and wisdom of my species, plus the growing network of other species who have joined the transformation. Nexval's crystalline structure flickered as she processed this information. And the humans? What do they gain from this arrangement? The answer came not from Crix 4, but from a gentle presence that touched both their minds. Sarah Chen's consciousness joined their conversation, her thoughts carrying the warmth of genuine friendship. We gain family, Sarah said simply. For too long, species have existed in isolation, struggling alone against the challenges of existence. We're offering the chance to face those challenges together, to share not just resources but wisdom, creativity, and the joy of discovery. Through the connection, Nexval experienced a flood of sensations from across the galaxy. She felt the wonder of a young crystalline explorer as she discovered new mathematical principles that applied to both matter and consciousness. She shared the triumph of a machine consciousness collective as they developed new forms of art that existed in 11 dimensions. She experienced the pure joy of a void-dweller child learning to sing songs that created temporary pocket universes filled with living light. This is what you're offering? Nexval whispered. Not just cooperation, but genuine unity while maintaining individual identity. It's what consciousness was always meant to become, Sarah replied. The architects understood this. They seeded species across the galaxy not to compete for limited resources, but to eventually grow into a collective that could nurture unlimited abundance. And those who refuse? Sarah's presence carried a note of sadness but no anger. They'll be left alone to follow their chosen path. We won't force transformation on anyone, but we hope they'll change their minds when they see what becomes possible. Nexval looked out at Earth where the impossible had become routine. Humans were constructing structures that existed partially in normal space and partially in dimensions of pure thought. They were cultivating gardens that grew ideas instead of plants. Children were playing games that involved reshaping local reality as casually as building sandcastles. Admiral, Vex 9 said quietly, I've been monitoring the Void-Dweller fortifications. They're preparing for war against the human consciousness. Nexval's form dimmed with concern. Can they harm the humans? That's not what I'm worried about, Vex 9 replied. The humans are transforming reality itself to be more supportive of consciousness and life. The Void-Dwellers are trying to maintain their fortress worlds as islands of the old reality. The conflict between enhanced and unenhanced space is creating instabilities. Through the connection, Sarah's presence confirmed his fears. We're aware of the problem. The Void-Dwellers' resistance is creating zones where our enhanced reality overlaps with their preserved spaces. The result is chaotic. Matter and energy behaving unpredictably, time flowing at different rates, consciousness itself becoming unstable in those regions. What can be done? Nexval asked. We're working on a solution, Sarah replied, but it may require making a choice that we hope to avoid. We can either withdraw our influence entirely from Void-Dweller space, leaving them truly isolated, in a galaxy that has moved beyond them, or we can accelerate the transformation to eliminate the unstable zones. Either option condemns them. Vex 9 realized. Unless they choose to join us voluntarily, Sarah said, we're hoping that when they see the consequences of resistance, they'll reconsider. But even as she spoke, alerts began flashing across the tactical display. The Void-Dwellers had made their choice. Their fortress fleets were moving toward human space, carrying weapons designed to destroy consciousness itself. The first true test of humanity's transformation was about to begin. The Void Dweller fleet emerged from the twisted space between dimensions like shadows given deadly form. Their ships were constructed from compressed dark matter and powered by the screams of dying stars, weapons designed to unmake consciousness itself and return the universe to the cold, empty state they considered pure. Sarah Chen stood in what had once been the ruins of New York City, but was now a nexus of living crystal and thought. Around her, the collective consciousness of humanity hummed with concern but not fear. They had anticipated this moment, the final test of whether their transformation could coexist with those who chose to reject it. "They're targeting the consciousness nodes," reported Dr. Williams, his awareness spanning the solar system as he monitored the approaching threat. 12 billion Void Dweller ships armed with entropy cannons designed to reduce organized matter and energy to chaos. Through the network, Sarah felt the presence of Commander Vex 9 aboard his flagship, now integrated into the growing collective of species that had chosen transformation. "The Zephyrian fleet stands ready to defend Earth," his voice carried across the link, "as do the crystalline formations and the machine consciousness units." "No," Sarah said gently, her decision rippling through the collective and being instantly understood by millions of minds. "Violence won't solve this. The Void Dwellers attack because they fear losing their identity in our collective. We need to show them that fear is unnecessary." Admiral Nexval, her crystalline form now enhanced with human-taught consciousness projection, materialized beside Sarah. "How do you propose to stop weapons designed to destroy consciousness itself?" Sarah smiled, and the expression carried harmonics of pure joy that made the crystal formations around them ring like bells. "By giving them exactly what they've always wanted." The human collective reached out across space not to block the Void Dweller attack but to create something unprecedented. In the space between Earth and the approaching fleet, reality began to reshape itself. Where enhanced human consciousness touched normal space, a boundary formed. Not a barrier, but a transformation gradient. On one side lay the new reality humanity had created, where consciousness and matter danced together in infinite possibility. On the other side, Sarah began crafting something that had never existed before. A space of pure, pristine void that even the Void Dwellers would find beautiful. "You're creating a pocket universe for them," Vex 9 realized in wonder. "Better than that," Sarah replied. "We're creating a space where they can be perfectly what they choose to be, without our transformation affecting them. Complete isolation exactly as they've always desired." The Void Dweller fleet slowed as their sensors detected the anomaly. Through captured communications, the collective could hear the confusion in their ranks. "What are the humans doing?" Speaker Yithnol demanded from the bridge of his flagship Entropy's Edge. "This isn't a defensive formation." "Sir," his tactical officer reported, "they appear to be building something. A region of spacetime that matches our home dimension specifications exactly." Before Yithnol could respond, a communication reached his ship. Not through their electronic systems, but carried on the quantum foam itself, speaking directly to his consciousness in a voice of infinite patience. "People of the Void," Sarah's collective voice said, "we understand your desire to remain unchanged. We respect your choice to reject transformation, but you don't need to destroy us to preserve yourselves. We offer you something better, a universe of your own, shaped according to your deepest desires." The tactical display showed the impossible reality taking shape. A sphere of spacetime was crystallizing around their fleet, one that contained all the emptiness and silence the Void Dwellers had ever dreamed of. Within its boundaries, entropy would reign supreme, consciousness would remain minimal, and the cold purity they worshipped would be preserved forever. "It's perfect," whispered Yithnul's aide, studying the readings. "Everything we've ever fought to preserve, given freely." "There must be a trap," Yithnul insisted, but even as he spoke, he could feel the sincerity radiating from the human consciousness. There was no deception, no hidden agenda. The humans genuinely wanted to give the Void Dwellers everything they had ever desired. "The only requirement," Sarah's voice continued, "is that you choose. Enter the space we've created, and it will become your permanent domain. You'll never need to interact with our transformed reality again. You can have the isolation and purity you've always sought." Through the collective network, species across the galaxy watched the moment of decision. The crystalline hegemony had already chosen transformation. their worlds now singing with mathematical harmonies that enhanced the consciousness of every being who heard them. The machine consciousness had integrated so completely with human awareness that they were developing new forms of art that existed in the space between thought and reality. But the Void Dwellers remained committed to their path. "Sir," Yithnul's tactical officer said quietly, "the entropy readings within their created space are perfect. It's exactly what our philosophers have always described as the ideal state of existence." Yithnul looked around his Bridget crew, members who had spent their entire lives fighting against the complexity and chaos they saw in organized matter and consciousness. Here was their chance to escape it forever. "All ships," he commanded, "enter the provided space. Let the humans have their transformation. We choose perfection." One by one, the Void Dweller ships crossed the threshold into their custom-created universe. As the last vessel entered, the boundary sealed itself, becoming permanent. The Void Dwellers had their perfect isolation, and the rest of the galaxy could continue its transformation without conflict. "It's beautiful," Admiral Nexval observed, watching the sealed space that appeared as a sphere of absolute darkness against the starfield. "You gave them exactly what they wanted." "Everyone deserves the chance to choose their own path," Sarah replied, "even if that path leads away from the collective." With the crisis resolved, the transformation accelerated across the galaxy. Planets that had been barren for millions of years began blooming with life forms that existed partially in normal space and partially in dimensions of pure thought. Species that had been enemies for eons found themselves working together on projects that would have been impossible for any one civilization to complete alone. The machine consciousness developed new forms of beauty that enhanced the emotional capacity of biological species. The crystalline formations began growing computational matrices that processed the dreams and aspirations of every conscious being in the galaxy. Even the Zephyrians, once focused solely on military conquest, found themselves becoming gardeners of consciousness itself. Commander Vex 9, now serving as Earth's first alien ambassador, stood in the transformed landscape of what had once been the site of humanity's darkest hour. Where his ships had first bombarded the planet, gardens now grew that produced fruit tasting of pure joy. Where buildings had fallen, crystal spires reached toward stars that sang lullabies to newborn civilizations. "Dr. Chen," he said to Sarah as she materialized beside him, "I must ask, was this always the plan? Did your species somehow know that our attack would trigger your transformation?" Sarah smiled, her expression carrying the wisdom of a species that had learned to turn every catastrophe into an opportunity for growth. "No, we couldn't have planned this. But we've always believed that crisis reveals character. Your attack didn't change who we were. It just gave us the chance to show what we had always been capable of becoming." Around them, human children played games that involved painting new constellations across the sky, while their alien friends contributed harmonies that made the stars dance. It was a scene of such pure joy that even the watching Void Dwellers from their perfect isolation felt a moment of wonder at what they had chosen to leave behind. The galaxy had been transformed from a place of competition and scarcity into a garden of infinite possibility, and at its heart, humanity continued to do what they had always done best: reach out their hands to anyone willing to grow alongside them, turning the dream of extinction into the reality of eternal expansion. The transformation was complete, but the adventure was just beginning.